just say no. Kids are too smart for that. They want science behind that, why they shouldn't be doing it. These kids could get a hold of this and that it was such high potency. Talk to your kid. Don't sit down at the dining room table and say, now we're going to have a talk. For a safe, healthy, and drug-free community. Watch Step Up to Save Our Children today.
Hello. Welcome to this episode of Step Up to Save Our Children. Today, our topic is the College Parent Handbook, Packing, Planning, and Parenting. My name is Denise Mayer, and I'm the founder and the director of Step Up Anderson Township. We are a coalition promoting a safe, healthy, and drug-free community. This podcast is attempting to meet parents and caregivers, grandparents, where you are. So no matter what you're doing, you can hop on, hop off, whatever, but listen and get this is your opportunity this time to find out what's going on in our kids' lives and to talk to your own children with honesty and truth and authenticity. Because the worst thing you can do is to talk to your kids and they know you're not being authentic. So that's where we are coming from. And my guest today, I'm so excited, is Dr. Jill Grimes, known social media as the College Doc. Dr. Grimes, he has 20 plus years of experience in private practice, university health, and academic medicine. We are delighted to have you, Dr. Jill. Let me actually share your background before we begin. Jill Grimes, MD, FAAFP, is a nationally recognized family physician, award-winning author, and the go-to expert for navigating today's teen health challenges. She tackles everything from blackout drinking and BORGs, B-O-R-G-S, to concussion and migraines, to the risks of counterfeit pills and study drugs. A regular contributor to CNN Wellness and author of the Ultimate College Student Health Handbook. She's known for turning medical issues into relatable stories, blending science with humor. Dr. Grimes meets teens and parents where they are, offering clear, actionable strategies without fear-mongering or judgment. So today, I am welcoming Dr. Jill. I've been looking forward to this for a month or more. So excited to have you. And I guess we can just get started. Your book is so amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I wrote it first for our kids and then for their friends and now for everyone.
And it's not just a book for college. It's just a book for health. And I think it's just that easy go-to for parents about so many things, even about themselves, sore throats and, whatever. It covers everything. And I was so thrilled to buy it and to look through it and to see all the things that were in there. Now, I had the opportunity to hear you on Operation Parent, and I always talk about Operation Parent in those webinars. Every parent needs to be getting on those and listening. They're
Totally
so
agree.
user-friendly and so easy to stop, start, get the recording. So that's their little plug. So today, let's start. I want to know everything. Why did you start to do this?
So actually, a long time ago, about 15 years ago, my next door neighbor and dear friend, her daughter was going off to college, and I was making her a college first aid kit. And I took it over there and I was really excited to give it to her. And the mom, Lynn, my neighbor and dear friend, she's like, "Oh, this is great. But honestly, she's not going to have Dr. Jill there to tell her when to use what." So she runs to her kitchen, she gets an index card and starts asking me rapid fire questions. When do you take Advil versus Tylenol? What do you do for diarrhea? What about, which cream goes on a cut? All of the things. And so what started off as these couple index card notes that I made for her daughter, I started making these that just kind of became my go-to graduation gift for high school students. And that evolved into about a 26-page laminated booklet. And at that point, I'd written other books and I was like, you know what? There's way more I want to put in here, because beyond just using the ingredients in the first aid kit, I wanted to talk about, what do you do for insomnia? What about test anxiety? All of those things. So That's how it evolved.
That's how it evolved. Well, I actually did little ones like that for my grandkids and, got a little tackle box or whatever and threw some stuff
Yes.
in, but it was never with enough thought. It was just what I knew to do and to make sure. And I laughed because the first thing on your list is a thermometer. And that was my very first thing that I put in there. We have to know
Yes.
if you're sick or not.
Oh, and what college students don't realize is that there is an element of, how do you get in to see the doctor? And more data points you can give that triage nurse, if you're talking to them on the phone, or nowadays, if you're entering into a computer, the better. Because the reality is, there's a lot of coughs and colds in college students, right? But if
Right.
you say, I had 103.2 fever last night, that that's a data point. If you can say that your pulse rate was 140 because you've been throwing up, that tells us, okay, you're really dehydrated. All these kinds of things. So yes, the thermometer is absolutely number one, and that is why it's important.
Absolutely. But I love that how you talk about the way we parent. So our children, the minute that they have a sore throat or whatever, moms, after they've had some children for a while, sort of know the routine of what to do, when to call the pediatrician, when not, when to get their prescription meds. So if you can jump into that, that was amazing to me.
About them taking over their prescriptions,
Yes.
yes. So particularly with ADHD medications, obviously, it's attention deficit. So, of course, parents are, and then particularly if your child has started on those medicines young, you are going to be the one handing it to them, and you should be initially. But the reality is, whether it's an ADHD medication or an anti-anxiety medication or an allergy medication or whatever, anything that is prescription, that is really something that during the high school years, they need to start learning how to not only be in charge of taking it themselves to make sure that they take it the same time every day, they don't miss any doses, but also that they know the process of getting refills and they know when to refill it. And parents, I may or may not be talking to all of us here. This is not just for teens. Do not wait until you are out of medication to ask for a refill. Don't wait until you have 2 pills left. When you're a week from being out, that is when you request the refill, especially right now we're seeing a lot of pipeline shortages for medications, and it may take well over a week to just for the pharmacy to physically get it in once there has been a request for a refill. So the things that I suggest for high school students is that you get a pill box for the week and that they fill it out. I mean, Sunday nights just seems to be a logical time before the school week starts, and that that they're in charge of taking it. You are the backup, not saying, did you take your medicine? Did you take your medicine? But you can look and see it's Monday. Is the pill still in there before they walk out the door? You can be a backup, but that's going to start teaching them that responsibility. And then when it's time for a refill, teach them how to do it. If it is an ADHD medication, that's a controlled substance, and at least the stimulant ones are. Not all of them are. But that you need to call the doctor's office and, just telling them how to do that. And so many of our younger generation, they have fear of phone calls, right? Telephonophobia. They'll do anything on their phone that's texting or online, which intimidates many of their parents and grandparents, but they really don't want to talk on the phone. And so one of the things is teaching them, writing out a script, this is Jill Grimes. I am calling to refill my X medication, and here my birth. They're going to ask your birthday, those kind of things. So just teaching them in those baby steps of taking over their healthcare so that they don't get to college and then forget to take it. And then the reality is we see problems both ways. When they forget to take it, let's use ADHD medications as the classic example here. Obviously, they're going to be less focused. They're not going to do as well in their classes with receiving and processing information. But when they take it twice by accident, which happens a lot because they'll take it, go to class, come back, take a nap, get up, not sure whether or not they took it, take another one. But then they get racing heart, palpitations, shaky, like you've had many pots of coffee. So that can actually evolve into a more concerning situation. So those are the reasons we want them to start doing this for themselves before they have to do it for themselves.
And I don't think a lot of parents think about that aspect off the top. They're thinking towels, sheets, backpack, whatever. They're thinking of the actual things that you have to buy, but the actual responsibility should be sort of number one if they're taking medications. And then, you get into all the things that you cover in the book that make a healthy student versus an unhealthy student. So if you want to start talking about I know you have nutrition. Yeah, you just take it away because it's
Sleep,
awesome.
sleep, sleep, sleep. The number one thing, if I could emphasize to every single college student, is sleep, because there's obviously their schedules are different. It's not like high school where you are at school at the same time every day and blocked straight through. You have different start times, and the biggest mistake that college students make that makes their insomnia worse is getting up at different times. It's more important to get up at the same time every day than to go to bed at the same time for our circadian rhythms.
It's
So
interesting.
it's fine to take a nap in the afternoon, but if you have 8 o'clock classes 2 days a week, you really need to be getting up. I mean, assuming you get up at 7 or probably 7:30, seven
Yeah.
forty-five,
Yeah.
rolling out of bed and racing out the
Right.
door. But you need to get up that time, is close to that every day. And that includes the weekends, and, an hour off, okay. But it's really better to get up at the same time and then take a nap later in the day in terms of wanting to have quality sleep and waking up rested. So that's a huge thing. The other thing that we're all guilty of is going to bed with phones and, scrolling. And for college freshmen, that really aggravates homesickness, because you're obviously looking at the highlight reels of everyone else's life, but you assume that you are the only one who hasn't found your friend group, and you're not having as much fun as everybody else is having, because nobody posts pictures of themselves being sad and alone in their dorm room.
So true.
So, you know,
Mhm.
but aside from even just like the screen issues of the blue light and that disrupting the quality of your sleep, it's more about an emotional thing of fear of missing out and being homesick. So those are the two major things about sleep. And then nutrition, of course. A lot of people worry about the freshman 15 and gaining weight, and certainly that happens, and that happens for a
Yes.
lot of reasons. There's so many kids that are involved in sports or dance or marching band in high school that do not do those same things in college. And so you're taking away what was this automatic, hour of or 2 or 3 or whatever of exercise a day, and you're replacing it with your own food choices, which convenience foods are usually not quite as nutritious as what you might have grown up with. So, and there's a big culture of meeting people for coffee nowadays,
Hmm.
coffee, which doesn't really mean a cup of black coffee. It means a 400 calorie frappuccino. And that is, an excess of 500 calories a day is a pound a week. So, that, and then of course there's tailgates and beer, margaritas, etc. Um, these all liquid calories count too. Anyway, but the point is less about, I'm far less concerned about the weight gain and far more concerned about the quality of nutrition you're putting in your body, because you want to be getting, we always say eat the rainbow, right? You want to be getting all the fruits and vegetables, the different colors on your plate. And that's because the different colors contain different vitamins and nutrients. And so we really want to encourage college students to prioritize getting those extra fruits and vegetables, and maybe get a smoothie, which would be a healthy choice rather than a frappuccino. Or
Frappuccino,
I
right.
don't mean to be picking on the frappuccino people, but
Yeah.
that is
I know.
it's
We get it. We get
it's
it.
a super
But
college common drink,
yeah,
especially,
yeah.
and in the fall we hit the pumpkin spice season. Pumpkin spice lattes right away.
Lattes. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So,
But
it's again, it's a social connection.
true. Very true. And and you're going to get into that. I know how important that is, but it's so different. Now, a lot of parents that work and, crazy schedules or whatever, maybe don't have actual dinner on the table every night or whatever. But when they get to college, you know, students are still used to a certain way that the mother cooked or things they
Mhm.
picked, whatever.
Or
And
the way
now,
the grocery shopped. You eat
yeah,
what's
right,
there.
totally different. And so, some of the, I know back in the dark ages when I was in college, you had one, you went through the food line and you had very few choices, whatever. And then when my children went to college, it was like going to the food court, at the mall or something. I mean, you want Italian, you want this, you want that. So there's a lot of choices. They're not always so healthy, but there are a lot of things that they can pick from. And so, but when that's over now and they go back to their, especially in the winter, when they go back to their rooms, now they're hungry, have been studying or whatever, they bored, whatever. They need to have some healthy choices to pick from. And I loved in your book how, you were even saying when they're in high school and grade school, even that, it's so important to have healthy snacks kind of laid out and available to them, um,
Visible.
visible. So they get
You
used to
want
that.
right, right. So that's your expectation. And one of the things I love about like care packages for finals or even midterms, if you're just sending a first care package, and this is true even if for your high school student in the house, create a little basket with healthy protein bars and bananas and whatever works that are healthier choices. But they get that association of okay, when I'm sitting down to study and prep and learn, that's my go-to snack. And that's a super healthy habit and it's going to improve your quality of retaining information
Knowledge, right.
and improve your grades.
Right, because if you send, tons of carbohydrates, particularly sweets and whatever, what we know what happens with that, you fall asleep. It makes you wanna go to sleep, not study. Yeah.
Exactly. The postprandial crash. Yeah, I dropped
Yeah, it's like,
that
that's
whole
not a
blood
very
sugar
good
up and down.
right, that's not a very good idea. So, mental health with the students, what you
Yes.
touched on homesickness, and that happened with all 3 of my dogs. No, really, the first 2. I think the 3rd one was ready to get out, but the first
The
2,
baby's time. I was the third one. No homesickness.
right, that's how she was. She's like, "Okay, I'm out of here." But, the first one, the oldest, oh my goodness, the sobbing phone calls, "I just wanna come home," and whatever, oh my goodness. And I had a little of that myself, I was the oldest, and I think, the first one that leaves the nest, it's like, "What happened?" And so,
And they're missing out. They know the
yeah,
rest of the family is still
mhm,
there, and I think that
right.
really contributes.
So it doesn't really matter how far away you go, it's the fact that you're away.
In fact, what I have found what one of the honestly really big surprises to me when I went from literally in the same town with a lot of the same population, except for now just restricting it to college age, is that the kids who were I live in Austin, Texas, and the kids who were from Austin and going to UT, they had worse homesickness because they were going home too much. They were trying to have a foot in both worlds and they were going home for every birthday, for every their siblings, you know, soccer game, whatever. And especially they're going home to do laundry. And what you miss out on is it's when people are lonely and bored on the weekends and they can't go home and they're doing laundry, hanging out, whatever, that's when those connections are made. And so I found it to be almost inversely related to the homesickness to how far away you are from home. And then we had kids from all over the world and I they certainly some of them had some homesickness. A lot for them, a lot of them told me that they really miss the foods, particularly if they're in Austin, we have awesome Mexican food,
I
but
know.
but
Yeah,
we may not have the best, East Asian food. So, although now people are going to disagree with that, but you know what I mean.
I
The
do.
the it is not how far away you are; it's how involved you are getting in your new setting, and
Mhm,
that's true whether you're in college or whether you're after college or whether you're just moving to a new town. It's really important to get involved. And I have a rule of 3. I say that you need to join, not try out for. You need to join 3 completely disparate organization. So maybe a service one, maybe a one that has to do with your major, maybe one that's just like a fun thing that you've never explored before. They have all kinds of sort of crazy sports that are not they may be competitive, but they're things like, like a cement canoe racing team. Like just
That's
right.
interesting.
Yes, that several places have that actually. But they have different, just all kinds of things and role playing games, and use this for an opportunity to join three different groups. But the real reason you're doing this, and you may not stay in all three, you may not stay in any of them, but you're going to meet people that have those three totally different interests. And you're going to start figuring out who you really connect with, because the first friends people make in college, yes, sometimes that's your lifelong bestie, but most of the time it's not. It's, I heard an expression the other day of Band-Aid friends from, Coach Suzanne, and I'm blanking on her last name. I want to give her credit, but they're temporary friends that you make quickly because you're all kind of hurting and having the
The
same
same
need,
time, right? Mhm.
you know? And so anyway, I think it's really important to one of the best things about college is all the opportunities to explore hobbies or interests that you've never had time for in high school, because nowadays everyone has to pick one thing and you have to be uber specialized in that. Our girls did dance. They had different dance classes 5 nights a week that, dance team. It was their whole world ended up being that, even though they had started off playing soccer and swimming and, having different kinds of things. You get so focused now in high school that college is the best time to explore different things, meet people with all different interests, and just find, one interest that pairs up with you, and you're going to be so much better off and connected.
And I think that's so important for our athletes, high
Yes.
school athletes, because they have, my grandson is in football. And I mean, he gets up at 5:30 every morning. He is up at school and lifting it. That's his entire, well, I shouldn't say it's his entire life, but I mean, that is his focus.
Well,
But yeah,
dance and band, same thing.
yeah,
Everybody around that whole culture.
right. And
Hmm.
he's I mean, I shouldn't say this. I don't ever want to say somebody's not, but I mean, I don't see him being a college player. Now he could, things change. He's only going to be a junior, but I mean, when you look at the big high schools and how many actually go from there to the college teams, it's very few. Yeah,
Tiny percent.
very, very few. So then now you've spent like all your high school focused on one thing, and now you go to college and you're like, whoo, well, I'll go to the games, but I'm not playing, and I think that can be a real difficult time that they
It's a
need to
loss
find
it's
some.
a loss of identity
Yeah,
too. It
yeah,
really is, and and sometimes it's harder for the parents to let go than the kids, because we've also been at every recital or football game or whatever and invested all the money and time, and I know I'm guilty of pushing our daughters to continue dance in college when they really had, it had been great, but they were done.
they were done. Right. And I
So
know so many kids really that is what happened with them. If it was dance, if it was whatever, it was like, we've now closed that chapter of our lives and we're starting a new one. And that's great.
which is great.
Right. Exactly. And there's so many, like you said, opportunities in college to find your niche. You just have to do it. And I think as far as friends go, I think you would agree, your first Band-Aid friends are in your dorm, are either your roommate or, girls or boy, whatever, on the floor. And
Mhm.
you just have to start picking through what their interests are, what your interests, what lines up, what doesn't. But initially, it's somebody to go down to the food court with, or, to
Or
walk
take a
across
walk
camp,
on
whatever.
campus.
Right, right. And I think that's so important. And it's particularly important for, um, I think, for teens that are a little bit more socially awkward, that would have a harder time.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
just introverted. Yeah,
yeah,
it
exactly.
is particularly hard
Yeah,
for them, and that's
it
why
is.
it's particularly important for them to find some unique things to do. And, the cool thing is that a lot of activities that may have been, uh, socially taboo in high school in your particular crowd, which nothing should be, but I mean, we all know that all those external pressures exist. But but you're people who enjoy doing those quirky things that you enjoy or that some people think is quirky, whatever. They're out there and you can connect with them. And I am telling you, I mean, Harry Potter clubs are huge in colleges.
No, I've heard that.
There are Quidditch clubs. There are, that like very specific Harry Potter
Mhm.
things. There's Harry Potter cooking clubs where they have butterbeer and
How
all,
funny.
all the fun things. Yeah. And I love that. And all the creative outlets, different things that is there. And I know everybody says, okay, and if there's a club you really want and it's not there, you can create it. That's true. But you know what?
That's
That's
hard.
really hard as a
That is
freshman.
really hard.
So,
Yes.
and I promise you, if one of the things that is actually really fun to do when you're looking at colleges, if you've got a high school student right now and you're listening, as they look at colleges, challenge them to Google what are the 10, 10 craziest clubs at the school, the 10 most unique, the 10 most popular. And you'll be so surprised at the different things like bad movie clubs. That's a thing where people gather and
Mhm.
they bring, they have food or whatever, food and drinks, and they're
Always.
talking as, it's a bad movie and everyone's, the people are joking and, and it's a more social thing than just watching a movie. But, that's actually really very popular.
Well, and I think those are also important because I think most people, or a lot of people, when they think of college, they think of fraternities and sororities and whatever. And those are for some people and not for all. And we've had things in the news about, the bullying and the hazing and all that kind of thing. And I think parents think, oh my gosh, we're sending our child to school and this is what's going to happen. And that's really it's part of it. I'm not trying to say that, but it's not all of it for sure. And there are so many other options, like you're saying, bad movie club, whatever.
Right. And
Yes.
my thing is even, one, some people straight up can't afford Greek life,
Right. Right.
two, not everybody's interested in it. But even for those who can afford it and they're interested in it and they love it, I still want them to not just be X, Y, or Z sorority or fraternity. I still want them to join the bad movie club or,
Mm-hmm.
juggling club or whatever, because it a lot of times you find your people in the Greek system and other times you do, but especially the second year when they all move into the houses and they're living there, they kind of want some different friend outlets as well. So,
Exactly.
it's not an either or. And I think it's almost doubly important for kids who are going through the Greek system. And the other thing is, especially this time of year, recruitment is going on right now, what they used to call rush.
Yeah.
Rush
Back in the day.
whatever,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Is now called recruitment, and there are so many heartbroken. But I'm sure there are for fraternities as well, but in college health, what I have seen girls coming in crisis, it's been more girls and they did not get
Right. They were
the
rejected.
sorority that they want. And they went in and they had all their eggs in one basket. That's all they wanted was to be an X, Y, or Z sorority. And they didn't get it. And then now you're starting off college crush. I love the schools that do not allow fall rush
I
or
agree.
recruitment. Excuse me.
Totally agree with that.
I really think it should be put off till January everywhere, and I applaud those schools that are doing
I do
that.
too. Yeah, I'm total agreement because that can be just such a heartbreaker. And like you said, that they set their sights on only one. They don't even look at the rest. Maybe it's a legacy or whatever, and we could get into that. But
Right, right, and
it's
the
too
same
much.
thing is true for selective clubs. Maybe you wanna do, pom, cheerleading, or dance, and, you were the in the elite club in your high school, but you don't make it. And again, it's that loss of identity, and it's a terrible way to start off the year.
It is. So one of the things I definitely we want to get to and touch on is, mom and dad send the child to school. The
Mhm,
child's been an amazing student,
mhm,
involved in so many things. You know, um, the prince, as we talk about it, goes
mhm,
off to college or princess,
princess.
and we're expecting great things and whatever. And mostly that does happen, but um, there are some, of course, that take a little bit of a risk. So I want to talk a little bit about the risks that are in college life and how they start, and just to wake parents up to that so that they're aware.
Okay, so I see the path you're going down here. I thought you were going one direction, and then it's another. So one, I wanted the direction I was going at first was,
You
let me just
go.
say, if you have a student who has, that straight A
Hmm.
student,
Yeah.
valedictorian, salutatorian, or top 10%, whatever, and they get into their dream school or they get in their dream major at whatever school, and they get there, and it's different. Whether it's the fact that their competition is, the whole level of competition is up because everybody who got into their program that they got into is also equally brilliant and
Brilliant. Right.
academically driven.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but also sometimes you go from a format, perhaps in high school, they were in an IB program where all of their testing was essay. And now they're in a college setting and it is multiple choice. And a lot of people would assume multiple choice would be easier. It's not if you've been used to essay. It
Right.
doesn't demonstrate your knowledge.
Right.
It's a different type of testing.
Hmm.
And so you get into a test anxiety and again, a loss of identity. You've gone from being the smartest kid, to one of the pack, and maybe you bomb your first test or quiz. And then you get into a cycle of test anxiety. So what I want to say is if your child is talking to you about they are getting severe test anxiety, there are things we can do to help that. There are many things that are not medication. It all involves slowing your heart rate down, and a lot of that is through measured breathing, slow, deep breaths. But also, if you've gone through the behavioral things and you're still having just severe kind of going into a panic attack, it will affect your grades. And
Absolutely.
there are there is a medicine that can be prescribed that we use for stage fright, for fear of flying, and for test anxiety. And all it does is slow your heart rate down. And so I want you to know that there are options and that college health centers see this all the time. And again, counseling first, behavioral changes often do the trick, but a lot of times too, we find prescribing this medicine and people will take it once or twice and then we call it a backpack medicine. Once they've taken it and it's worked, they know it's there, they know it's an option. They don't take it, but they have it with them in case they need it.
Right.
So
Well,
that's not addictive.
and I think depending on what size high school you came from, um, I always talk about our elementaries around here as being teddy bear central. The teachers are so huggy and lovey, and and they're going to help you no matter what happens. And then that goes over to the high school. The teachers have known you for 4 years, maybe, or at least seen you, and so you have this comfort zone. And I think then what happens is the kids go away to school, and these are professors. I mean, they don't, I mean, I'm not saying they don't care about you. I don't mean that, but they've got there could be 400 kids in a big class. That's how it was when I went to college. And so
And
they
more
don't
so
know you.
now,
You don't.
especially when they're an online version. They're not going
Oh
to know.
yeah. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, I think it can be so overwhelming with what you're learning, and, um, plus a lot of these, I don't know if it is this way anymore. I know they do things online now, but it used to be like in these big auditoriums with like 300 children, 300 students. And I was lucky if I could see the board. What is he writing? So it was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, so
and
that can
possibly
be,
taught by a teaching assistant.
oh,
Not that the teaching
absolutely.
assistants aren't dedicated and everything else, but, like,
Absolutely true.
it is a very different dynamic. So,
It
yes, I
certainly
think there's a
is.
lot of that.
Yeah.
But
And that's
and
true.
and because of that, so I'm gonna segue right into where I think you were going. Because of that, you run into situations where you are getting so panicked about a test because you didn't do well on the last one and you're not sleeping and your friends know that you're super anxious and then you have a friend who's like, oh my gosh, just take this pill and get some sleep. Just it's just a sedative, just take it. And or you have to stay up all night. And let me just say, staying up all night studying is never the best choice for prepping. A tired brain doesn't learn information well, it doesn't retain information well, and you will not be able to process things on the test the next day. So it's not a good idea. But when people are staying at, a lot of times people have a project that's due or a paper that's due. And again, you have a friend, a classmate, a suite mate, a roommate who says, here, just take this study pill. Just it's just going to help you focus. And that is how kids who you would think, oh my gosh, they would never, quote, do drugs, end up taking a pill to help with a symptom. And they think it's a prescription pill from a friend. And unfortunately, nowadays, we all know about the fentanyl crisis and all the drugs that are sold on the street. These are manufactured pills. They are from, illegal sources, and most of them have fentanyl in them, and it can be extremely dangerous. And that's where we talk about one pill can kill. It's not that somebody is abusing drugs or taking it as a party drug. It is that a friend gave them, somebody that they trusted, a peer, a friend, whatever, gave them something, and they thought it was going to help in a specific instance, and instead they are poisoned with
Right.
fentanyl.
Well, and that happened. Three students that were at Ohio State, and a couple of them lived around the area. They were excellent students, and they were taking finals. And someone gave them what they thought was an Adderall, and one of the three survived. The other two did not. Yeah, and and these were really good kids that but they just thought they needed that extra thing to help study, and that's what happened. And so, yeah, I could go on and on about the fentanyl. It is so prevalent in so many of the things. And some of the colleges have fentanyl strips, but we know that's almost kind of a joke. It's not a joke, but you can't test a
You can't
pill.
test the whole thing, right?
No. So it's like that is certainly not a safety feature at all. And
Yeah.
yeah,
That's not
that's a
my
real
favorite harm
concern.
reduction strategy for sure.
Yeah.
I think it, because you're not testing the whole thing.
Right, exactly. Well, one of the things on your bio that I had to look up because I had no idea what it was Black Outrage Gallon, Borg. I
A
thought,
board.
what in the world? I know I'm out of date, but what is that? And that's one of the things that, because I know I want you to talk about the blackouts and the alcohol and all that. So jump right in when you have a minute here to get your thoughts together.
Okay, so I'll jump straight into Borg, and then we'll explain blackout. So Borg, BORG, stands for Black Outrage Gallant. And what happened was about, I'm trying to, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. This is a relatively new phenomenon.
Okay.
But the first one I was aware of was when there was a huge problem, which is why it made the national news, which is why I became aware of it. I believe it was up in like Minnesota. It was somewhere cold, and they were having a party on a frozen lake. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with alcohol in a frozen lake, right? And
Right. Yeah, exactly.
and they decided to, they wanted to take their drinks out. And so what they did was they took an empty gallon container, and you know they put in whatever alcoholic beverage they wanted or basically vodka.
Hmm.
They were putting a bunch of shots of vodka in there, and then they put Gatorade in there, thinking that the electrolytes were going to help prevent hangovers. And the Borg was born and they a lot of and then actually in this particular thing, that I think like 22 people were sent to the hospital because people were getting alcohol toxicity from drinking too much. Again, not a big shock if you are pouring too much in there. All that being said, I just want to say that if you are going to choose to drink, so this evolved into a tailgate thing. So you have your drink for the day, right? I don't think it's an entirely bad idea, these Borgs, and then they give them clever, funny names, which I thought was fun. But the reality is, a lot of students don't drink, and
Right.
nobody knows what you put in your Borg except you. And sober you gets to decide, what do I want the option of drinking, rather than drunk you who's, just being handed drink after drink, making those decisions, which obviously is going to impair your judgment. So sober you gets to decide what you even want the option of drinking during the day. If you put 3 or even 4 shots in there, and that is something that is, it's a gallon thing that you're sipping on all day, I, you know, I think that's a safer choice
Definitely.
than just drinking nonstop. So I always try and recognize when students are doing something that may actually be a better alternative for some. And I can tell you, a lot of college students just don't want other people to know that they don't drink, because they're like, well, the people are going to think I'm not any fun. And um, and of course, that's not true. You can absolutely be the life of the party with 0 alcohol on board, but not everybody has the confidence or the outgoing nature to do that. So I like anything where people have control over what they're doing. They're the one who decides. I like that it was, a container that was only for that one person.
Right.
But what I hate is that when this became like a popular trend on TikTok, people were putting supposedly, a fifth of vodka in there, which is 17 shots. That's enough to kill you. Half that can kill you. That's just ridiculous. But anyway, but that's that. So what is a blackout? So nowadays, people refer to, oh, she got blackout. They don't even say blackout drunk. It's just like, oh yeah, or I'm gonna, I'm gonna get blackout. It's a verb, and I'm sorry, it's a noun. I'm going to get blackout. Anyway, um, the it's not to drink until you're passed out unconscious. That's obviously extremely dangerous. Blackout refers to you have a memory gap the next day. So what happens is it's typically when you do shots, because getting this memory blackout happens because your blood alcohol level went up too high too quickly. The speed is very key in this. And then your brain stops taking short-term memories and storing them as long-term memories. So it doesn't matter how many times people remind you or they show you a video of yourself. You might be able to see what you did, but you're not going to actually remember it because you never created the long-term memories to begin with. And
That's terrifying.
it is, well,
It's
yes,
terrifying.
it is completely terrifying. And there's the whole party battle cry of blackout or back out. That's, in the party culture, which is not everybody. I want to say over and over again, this is not everybody. It's not every Greek organization, but it is some, and it is some not Greek organizations. But if you are in the party culture where the whole point is to get wildly drunk and do whatever you want, and then they say, well, if you don't remember it, it doesn't matter. Well, obviously, from a medical standpoint and legal standpoint, it most certainly does matter, regardless of whether or not you remember what you were doing. You can get pregnant, you can get an STD, you can assault someone, you can have just a physical accident, you can trip and fall, hit your head, all the things, right? And
Absolutely.
consent is obviously a really important thing. And when many people are physically intimate and hooking up in college, and they are doing that when they are drunk. By the way, officially, no one, just so I've said this and be clear about it, you cannot give consent if you are drunk. And you don't get to decide if someone else is drunk. And someone who is giving you enthusiastic, verbalized, ongoing consent, which is, we don't just say no means no. Yes, that is true. But rather than just a one-time yes, true consent for physical intimacy involves ongoing, enthusiastic, non-coerced
Participation. Yeah.
yeah, verbalized consent. But they may be giving you that. But if they're also doing shots at the same time, one, they're drunk and so they can't give consent. Remember that. Two, the next morning, they may have no memory of being enthusiastically participating in physical intimacy with you. And now you've got this person said, that person said. And this is not gender specific. I want to be very clear about that. Definitely see this across the board. And this is really something you need to talk with your kids about, because whether they're the one who is victimized or whether they're the one who is doing the victimizing, I mean, this it doesn't it's not like somebody sets out and like, oh, I'm going to go take advantage of X, Y, or Z person because they're drunk, although clearly that happens and that's terrible. But it's this group think of, hey, let's get drunk and party and hook up. And
And I think some of that is just a culture that we see on movies and,
sure,
all these things where people think, oh, well, in order to have a cool experience in college, this is what I need to do, or this is what I want to be a part of, or whatever, without really thinking, of course, their brains aren't all the way developed. We know that. S-
right.
So, they're making decisions based on not reality actually, and that's where the problems lie. So the other thing is the co-use that I would like for you to talk about. We're talking about the alcohol
Crossfaded.
and these
Mhm.
boards and blackout and all that, but now there's a lot of with the cannabis being added in. So if you could kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yes. So the expression is to be cross-faded. If you are mind alter substance with alcohol, it's usually alcohol and weed. That's
The
cannabis,
usual, yeah.
which is typically referred to as weed by young people now, but or gummies, because of course the THC containing gummies, same thing. But it's really it's just very risky. Alcohol has its own set of risks, no doubt. But it's a little more predictable of if you have this much, this happens. As your blood alcohol level goes up, you can sort of expect this. When you add in another substance, whether it is cannabis, weed, gummies, whatever THC product, or a sedative like Xanax, when you add in these other things, the risk is not just additive, it is logarithmic. And it's not 1 + 1 is 2. We got 1 + 1 is 5. Um, and with cannabis products, you don't know how much is in anything. Even if it says this gummy is 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams, it may or may not be.
Yeah,
and
probably a lot higher, yeah.
not unlike someone handing you a drink and you don't know how much is in there, but
True.
at least if you have a can of White Claw,
Hmm.
you know exactly how much alcohol is in
Right,
there.
right.
And on top of there's so many things with cannabis, but these things are really increasing the risk. And if you're on a prescription medicine, an antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication, all of these things increase your risk of having a seizure. And when you pile them in together, your seizure risk goes up. Your all of the dangers, the bad things that can happen to you go up. And with the concentrated cannabis products, we are seeing more and more psychosis. So
Oh, yeah.
they call it greening out
Yep. Oh,
if
yeah.
you get too much of the THC product. And that can be a short-term horrible experience, or that can be something that unlocks sort of a switch in your brain. If you are genetically predisposed to um, schizophrenia, bipolar depression, bipolar disorder, excuse me, with psychotic features, you might unlock a psychosis that we can't fix.
Right.
And I'm not saying it all causes it, but I am saying it can unlock it earlier than it would have just given your genetics. And what do I mean by psychosis? I mean severe paranoia, believing the FBI is after you, chasing you, hunting you down. These things are very terrifying. They're not, people think, especially grandparent level, when you think about weed,
Yeah.
used to be called
Woodstock.
pot, you think
Yeah.
of, Cheech and Chong,
Yeah.
a group
Woodstock.
sitting around in a circle passing around a joint, and that had a very small amount of THC in it, and it was shared by 10 people, and it was a happy, mellow buzz. Now you've got there are different strains, that one supposedly makes you calm and the other one supposedly makes you more stimulated. And honestly, that's not, there are aspects of it that's not entirely true. But the thing is, you don't know how much you're getting, and again, you can have these really terrifying experiences, which may or may not end there, and it is addictive. I wanna say that. Today's products, THC products are addictive. They're not addictive for everybody. It's
They are addictive.
1 in 6 teens will get addicted, which means 5 out of 6 don't, and that's where you get and if you don't acknowledge that, and I'm not saying that makes it good, I'm not at all, I'm saying the opposite, that if you don't know if you're the 1 in 6, but the problem is in teens and young adult peer groups, they see people that use it and can take it or leave it, but that may not be the case for you.
And that's why I say you have to be authentic when you talk to them.
Right,
You
right.
cannot, say things and that they can come back and say, "Well, now I know that's not really true because a friend of mine, blah, blah, blah."
Right.
But, with the gummies, getting back to that a little bit, because you're not breathing it, that goes instantaneously into your system, it's going to
Yes.
your gastrointestinal,
Yes.
and you don't feel it. So now you're having some drink, somebody offers you that. You think, well, I don't, that didn't do anything different. So then I take 2 or 3 or 4, and then they do end up, I know, out here in the emergency room.
All the time.
Mhm.
All the time with the edibles, the gummies especially, and that is exactly why, because with a drink or any kind of inhaled substance with vaping, you get immediate or, immediate, at least within 15 minutes, you start feeling it. With a gummy, with any kind of edible, it does not even start to take effect for a minimum of 45 minutes and sometimes not up to 90 minutes. But nobody waits that long. I mean, that's half your time at a party if you were going somewhere for a couple hours. And so people do, they take a second one and then when it hits them, now you've got, nonstop vomiting, and plus or minus paranoia and
All the stuff.
people do
Yep.
end up in the emergency rooms all the time.
Yep. And speaking of the emergency room, I really want to address the Good Samaritan law. I always say that no student should go to college without knowing about that, even if they're not participating.
Oh, yeah,
Because
especially if they're not participating, because 'cause they're the
right,
one who's gonna
right,
be responsible. They're the one who everyone's gonna look to help, like, "Oh, go help, you're sober, you drive them, you take them."
right. And kids, like we said, their brains aren't fully developed at all. And I know when my youngest daughter was at Ohio State and the fraternity house next door, they were having some kind of a party, whatever. And one of the boys, and I don't know why he would have taken this, but it's kind of like the date rape drug. I forget, must do something. I'm not familiar with that so much. GHB, I think, isn't it? And yeah, and he blacked out, passed out all the way, and they put him to bed, and he died. And, they thought "Oh, he'll sleep it off, they'll just put him
Right,
upstairs." And I have another niece that, knew enough not to do that kind of thing, and so she called 911, and, they were able this was the University of Dayton, they were able to get there and help this kid, that was and I don't remember what they had taken, I don't really remember, but, uh,
yes.
I
So
think
I Go
yeah.
ahead. Okay,
No,
if I
you
can
tell
jump
me.
in there, though, the one thing I want people to hear is this. The number one question I think that I get asked by college students who are in the party scene is, "How do I know if somebody is unconscious and needs help, or they're just drunk and sleeping it off?" And here's the answer. If you cannot wake someone up, you should be able to, I mean, and I'm talking, you may need to shake, you grab their shoulders, Emma, wake up," or and they should be able to wake up and talk to you. They might be irritated with you, but they should be able to talk with you, and if you can't wake someone up, period, they're unconscious and you need to call for help, and if you have Narcan nowadays, you need to administer that as well, and Narcan is only going to help. It is not going to hurt anything. All it does is reverse the effects of opioids. And the specific effect that you're reversing is it's stopping you from breathing,
Right,
which is how you die, right?
right,
So
exactly.
if someone is unconscious or if they're sleepy and throwing up, if they are just can't stop throwing up, if you cannot wake them up, these are all reasons to call for help. What does call for help mean? Most of the time it means calling 911. And people are like, "Well, I don't want to do that." And, well, if I called 911 for every person that I saw throwing up, well, you don't need to call it for every person that you see throwing up. It's specifically if someone is falling asleep, which may mean that they're going unconscious, or that if they cannot stop throwing up, or again, if they're just unconscious, that is who you need to call 911 for. And you don't want to live with thinking you could have helped someone in addition to the, everything else. These are big, heavy burdens to carry. And
Absolutely. And it can change your entire life.
yeah,
And, even though you weren't participating, you weren't whatever, but, you stood on the sidelines when you could have saved that child's life. And I think that, parents need to understand that. And, that their child, if they call 911, they're not going to get in trouble, even if they were at a party where this was going on or whatever. It doesn't
right,
matter. They're
right.
it's all the
Yeah,
harm
so
reduction.
to be
Yeah.
clear, the Good Samaritan laws and everyone has they're different for different
Different.
states, and
Yeah.
then universities have different policies, but in general, you are not going to get in trouble even if you are drunk, you're underage, you're drinking. If you help someone else, you are not going to get in trouble for that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think that, like you said, and we have to keep emphasizing that, so many of the kids aren't going to do this, aren't going to get to that level at all. The problem is we still have maybe 20% that might not get to that point, but I mean, that are going to participate in these, blackout rage gallons and all the other stuff that used to be. There was some other name we had for that back in the day where they had a big like tub and they poured all kinds of stuff in
Trash
and then
can.
people, yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah, and you think, "Oh my gosh, you have no idea what anybody put in there." And now it's so serious, with the fentanyl and everything else and, LSD even. I know people don't even talk about that, but that's still prevalent. People still sometimes do that kind of stuff and then wonder why they jump off of a five-story building, and that has happened too.
Yeah,
So,
sadly.
yeah. I just feel like there's so much information, Dr. Jill, that's why this is so important. There's so much in here that would make parents feel a lot better about sending their child to college. But also, I mean, I think every parent should have this handbook handy
Thank you.
through grade school, through high school, and of course through college, because everything keeps changing. And, nowadays pediatricians aren't excited for you to call them every 5 minutes, and so then people get on the internet and they Google something and absolutely freak themselves out. Where this is, I think this is just, I can't say enough about this book. And that's why I wanted to have you on today,
Thank you.
because when I first saw it and ordered it and read it, I thought, oh, if I could have only had this, back in the day. So now the grandkids are going to be having this, to take away with them. I've got two that are just, one's finished. She's a nurse now. And the other one,
Congrats.
yeah, one's going to be a senior. So I think at this point she kind of knows, but they have heard me talk for the last 7 or 8 years about all this stuff. And I think they know. And they always say, oh yeah, I know about that or whatever. So I don't know. We'll see. But I've got little ones coming up that are going to get this book for sure. So anyway, well, I can't thank you enough for being on today and sharing this. And I just hope that a lot of our parents that are listening will get out there and get the book and read it and send it along with and the list that you put together in the back of the book with all the things that need to go in that bag. Amazing, including the Narcan. And,
Yeah.
those are all things that should
Well,
be in there.
that's what started it. That
Yep.
was really important to me that my publisher let me put that in there.
Well, thank goodness, because it's amazing and awesome. And I can't thank you enough for being on. I really can't. And I think that our viewers or listeners well, we have viewers and listeners will have a great takeaway from this stuff. So I appreciate it. And it's the perfect gift. So thank you so much for being on, Dr. Jill. And that was so great to actually meet you.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
and thanks for all the good work that you're doing.
Thank you. And you as well. So thanks so much. You have a great day.
You too.
Thank you all for listening today. You can see these podcasts on YouTube, social media, including Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. You can also access them on our website, which is www.stepupanderson.org, and listen on Spotify. Please share, though, and most importantly, if you can subscribe that would be amazing. And then we will put Dr. Jill's website up when this launches, and you'll be able to get to that as well. And maybe reach out to her. I don't know. I don't want to say that because then maybe somebody will, but I'm sure you will be accessible through your website. So
Yes.
thank
I
you
am.
so much. You have a great day.
Thank you.